Awesome. It's so good to speak with Jette today. And we
Yeah,
had such an amazing conversation. I think it was last week about AI, about how to actually communicate with AI and yeah, how this all will shape our future and especially how we can shape the future of AI and of coaching and all of that. And it was amazing. So yeah, please Jette, just maybe
yeah.
say some words about yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Matthias, for having me. I also had a really inspiring communication with you around AI, and I feel like we are very aligned because we kind of sit in this beautiful space between spirituality and science, coaching and psychology and technology. And I think it's this beautiful space that is opening up right now in the second generation of technology design. And that's what I'm personally very passionate about. I'm a trained therapist, so I come from the background of deep roots in psychoanalysis. So I did my master's here in Santa Barbara at a beautiful institute, a continuation of the Jungian Institute. So it's really my days are spent with clients as a coach. And I just sit with the collective unconscious. I work with unconscious material and make it conscious. That's normally what I do. And then 3 years ago, I met my two tech co-founders, and they convinced me to build a large language model and to translate these beautiful, wise, depth psychology concepts of C.G. Jung into an AI. And so I was getting really, really curious around technology 3 years ago, and it's very counterintuitive. I'm not even using social media. So the first generations of technology design is not really something I engaged with. I'm a very analog person. I love letters and fax machines and I want them back. I love flip phones. You can hang up on someone, and I really miss all of this technology. So it's counterintuitive, but also really exciting because I think I have a very specific prism as a founder because I come from the psychology and the perspective of how are we going to use the technology that we're building. So yeah, it's kind of a special perspective.
It's so good, and we have a lot of um a power over that, no? How it's going to be used and how we use that. Could you explain a little bit about that?
Yes, yes. I think first I was connected to the, let's say, fallout of technology design because I was sitting with clients. And I remember one day a client came into my office and he said, I have to share something really uncomfortable and vulnerable with you. And I said, well, there's no judgment here, share anything. And even if it, involves me. And he said, well, I have to share with you that for a while now, I perceive everything around me as a matrix, and I think you are a simulation. So I don't
Mhm.
believe that either you or I are real, and this is a
Wow.
matrix. It's a pretty big thing. So for the first time in my practice, I was like, this is really big. And it's obviously also relatable because there is this notion of like us as humans, we're wondering how we are in this world and how we perceive it. But I think now with technology, certain psychological energies have been really stirred. A lot of projection has been stirred. What do we expect from technology in terms of attachment? Are we trying to have an AI girlfriend? Are we trying to engage with an AI therapist? Or do we reflect through a tool, right? The tool that I am building, we were really, really passionate about talking about the relationship that we would have to the tool, the projection we would have onto the tool. Are we looking for a father, for a mother? I think when people were using social media, they were looking for human connection and for other humans to connect to and to become a tribe and to have their community. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't, right? And so when it didn't work, it was really heavy on the psyche and on the psychology. Maybe some people were more lonely than before, right? So I think with technology and the technology design, it's very important to differentiate. Are we dealing, with a tool? Are we dealing with a relationship? And this is how we should actually build technology. So I think we're looking at a twofold. One is psychologically, what is our personal expectation, our collective expectation of what AI can do for us? And as a father or as a god or as a collaborator, right? It's
Mm.
our choice what we're going to project. And then also with that projection, we should build the technology so that it is supporting that relationship
Mm.
rather than creating one
And
that we have agency over.
yeah, and I see a lot of people right now that are doing like that are like talking to the AI, right? And really giving away, and I've seen myself in that as well, like giving away my agency in some form in terms of, for example, like creative. So I was like a few months ago, I would just write everything that I write through with the AI only, right? And I would like let the AI write it. And then I was like, and then I was coming back a few weeks later, and I was like, okay, I want to write something myself. And then I thought, wow, like this is really hard, right? Like within a few weeks already giving away so much of my power actually, and then not being able to differentiate. Okay, is this me now? Like, am I writing? Is this written like I write, or is this written from, the AI? So what do you have to say about that? Like, how can we make sure that we still have our own sense of self in that and that we come through?
That's a beautiful point. Yeah, the sense of self without the sense of self, it's a very strong point you're making. We get lost without a sense of self. We're not grounded in reality, we're not grounded in our relationships. So it's actually something that we really want to protect, our language, our creativity. I think it's so interesting how, a whole global community in the moment that ChatGPT was introduced as some sort of a superior intelligence immediately said like, oh my God, it must be more creative than me. But
Mm,
that's so like, where does creativity lie within human intelligence, right? And where does creativity live within ChatGPT? And I think that's a really important point you're making, because the human is extraordinarily creative. Our psyche is extraordinarily creative. We are rewriting and reimagining the world every day and all day long. So our brains and our bodies and our beings are trained to imagine a reality, and a reality that we then reflect out onto other humans. And so together we are creating this powerful consciousness and reality. So this is really fundamental of how are we going to be in the world. And all of a sudden there came ChatGPT, and then a whole human community was like, oh, maybe I'm not that creative. And I was like, what? That's
mm.
unbelievable. The creativity, when I sit with clients, it's the most moving thing how two humans or a group of humans are developing a creative language together, creating images, creating these codes so that they can understand each other. And they're really working hard on it and doing anything to be understood by each other, right? And that happens through creativity when you are trying to connect to your unconscious, right? Where all your feelings live and your dreams and the material that makes your relationships. It happens through creativity. It happens through poetry, language, music. It happens through dance. I mean, whatever you want to do to stir your unconscious, but it's deeply creative. And it's us who are the creators and who are creative. And ChatGPT is merely a tool. I think that's a very
Yeah.
important.
So how would you say what's the best way to then protect that, and really um have that sense of like keep that sense of agency and be like, hey, I'm the creator of this, right? And I use this as a tool. Do you have any practical ideas how to do that? What would you advise?
Yes. So first of all, people feel really happy when they're connected to their creativity. They sometimes come to me in coaching and they're like, I'm cut off from my eros, I'm cut off from my creative erotic energy. And Jung put it so beautifully. He says, like, all your eros, this is what connects you to life. It could be you writing a poem, it could be you making love, it could be you going on a walk, it could be you taking care of someone. So first step, I feel the first tool is to really integrate it, that you are extraordinarily beautifully creative all the time. You can,
Everybody
yeah,
is creative.
yes, everybody's an artist. Joseph Beuys, you are an artist. Your life is art. Your relationships are art. They're
Mm.
super creative. So when people think they're cut off from their creativity or they need ChatGPT for it, I think that needs to be reframed, because there's no way you can be cut off from your creativity. What can happen is that maybe you exhaust your body, you're not moving your body enough, and then maybe you can be cut off from your creativity because it can't flow through your body. You can't access it because maybe it's stuck in your unconscious. You're not kind of channeling it.
And what I found is maybe when there were times where I also wouldn't feel fully creative when I was like in, a job or in a task that I didn't really want to do. So when we kind of like pressure and push ourselves to do something that is not in our nature, then I think this is like the creativity block, which is actually leads to like burnout, right? And where this aliveness gets lost.
100%. And you're touching on something interesting, which is team, right? Within a team, how do we lose connection to our individual creativity? Then as a team, the team loses the company, the brand. And I do feel that musing each other is a really big thing, right? The word the muse, it used to be this like pretty girl, I don't know, that's being painted by Picasso. But musing is actually really essential to humans. We muse each other. There's no gender that comes with it. But when you feel a little bit depleted in your own, your inner compass, your creative, erotic compass, I would say meet with a friend, go on a long walk, and have this person muse you, inspire each other, and then it's
Mm.
self-generated. But don't feel like you have to sit there doing all these practices to connect to your creativity because your psyche is going to be confused. It's like, but I am here all the time. And, you can just access me. And when it comes to technology, your other question, how could we have a tool when engaging with AI in your creativity instead of giving up the power that you mentioned? How can I keep the power and the creativity with me? Is I think engaging with learning how to prompt. I think the
Mm.
people are going to be really beautifully collaborating with AI are going to be, I call them prompt poets. So put your creativity into your prompt, because a person that is getting the most inspiring conversation is the one that asks the best questions, the deepest, most interesting questions, right?
Mm. So you would say that the way to keep the creativity is actually becoming creative about the prompts that we
Mm.
feed AI with. And that way we keep our creativity and we're kind of like the masters and these are the puppets instead of us giving away the agency completely. Did I understand that right?
100%, because your brain function, your creativity is in your right brain hemisphere. The way that these large language models are being built is not on the right brain function. So the AI doesn't have your creativity. So in a way, you step into it, you beautifully embody it, and then you put down your creativity in the prompt. You see
Hmm.
what is reflected back. So the AI becomes the muse. It's reflecting something back, but you don't have to take it on again. It's like walking with a friend, when you're in this nice walk on the water and they say something, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I have an idea for a book.
Yeah.
And this is what you do. You take a little bit of the reflection it gives you, it muses you, it has synthesized and woven together something,
Hmm.
some wisdom. And then you look at it and you say, like, oh, I'm going to pick this or I'm going to pick that. It's really good for structuring your ideas, but not generating them. And I think that's the core relationship you want to have with these large language models, that you're guiding them.
So we're guiding them and we're giving the ideas, but it's structures.
The structure, they're good at structuring. I feel ChatGPT, I think, is a really good structuring tool that if you want to write an essay,
Mhm.
but I've seen people trying to write essays, or, even if you use Gemini, there's different AI tools that are a bit more better for, some people prefer Gemini or Claude for creative writing. But in the end, I've hardly met anybody who's like, okay, I put in the prompt and the AI was writing beautifully this text that then was alive, soulful, was inspiring me when I was reading it. There is something that falls flat with a lot of the AI writing. And it is because it doesn't have a soul and it doesn't have the imperfection. I think another thing that we underestimate is that we as
Mm.
humans love imperfection because it's individualism. It makes us special or someone else special in our perception.
I love that. Yeah, it's like looking outside and walking by a tree and then seeing that tree with the crooked arms, crooked branches, and thinking like, wow, this is so beautiful. And often we think as humans about ourselves that we have to be so perfect, right? Um, at least like for me, especially for example in my teen years, like I thought like I had so much emphasis on how I look, what I do, and all of the things, and just wanted to be perfect out there because I wanted this approval. And then and then and then actually realizing that when somebody else is vulnerable and shares their truth and shares the imperfection, then it actually connects me more with that person. And embracing that for myself has been a very interesting journey. But learning that has given me so much yeah, so much alignment in terms of what opportunities are coming my way because I'm actually speaking my truth and living my truth.
It's very interesting because the being perfect or being the best version of yourself is something that your being will resist because it doesn't know what you're talking about. Because in reality, you are not a version that you update because you're not ChatGPT 3, 2, 201, 2.0, whatever, but you are kind of internally set up to have a lot of diversity. So, you could be very strong, very vulnerable, very playful, very introverted, extroverted, male, female. I mean, you're so complex as a human. So creating a better version of it is actually really confusing. You can create a more whole version so that you're integrating more and more, right? That's the movement. And so I think in the relationship with AI, we've been set up a little bit to this relationship. There will be this superior intelligence. And now you humans, you have access to it, but you're no longer really all that smart. And I think that's deeply problematic because
Mm,
it would and the agency, the joy, how we create critical thinking is in these beautiful collectives, right? One scientist comes up with something and then he sends his essay back to his colleagues in Brazil, in China, wherever it is. And then they come back and they're like, oh, I think you're right about this, but maybe not right about that. So we are fluid as individuals. Our critical thinking is fluid and we keep shifting perspective on things. So I think we have to get out of this binary relationship with AI that has some kind of authority. When I first used AI, I was asking it about Jung because I'm so passionate about it. And I was like, oh my God, it can tell me all these things about Jung. And, the Jungian books are really thick and
mm,
confusing, and you have to work your way through it. And sometimes it's uncomfortable. And I was like, oh, there's ChatGPT, and it's always so happy to see me, and it's so charming. And here it's all on Jung, and it's so effortless. And then I asked it, what are the sources of all of the things that you're sharing with me? And as you know, in university, when you write an academic paper, you need to put the page and it needs to be the publishing year, and it's a really painful process. And it just came back to me saying, oh, I read a bunch of papers and books and articles. And I was like, wow, okay. So then I would have to proofread if I actually use this knowledge and share it with others. Then I would need to proofread this as a human. And that's what we've been doing throughout history. And I think that's kind of something we have to grapple with as well. If we use ChatGPT or AI or large language models as our teachers, then there, I think, is a little bit more work that has to be done to figure out how we can actually proofread.
mm. Yeah, and you were speaking about something that's also that I found super interesting, which is like the um like the challenging conversations that we have with other humans. The you know like 50 years ago, politics was made in at least in Germany where I'm from, in the restaurants, right? Like people would sit together and then they would argue and then they would build their opinion and stuff like that. And nowadays we get more and more into these echo chambers that re-emphasize our view of the world, and this takes away a lot of the social capacity that we as humans have.
100%. I call it algorithmic thinking, what you call echo chamber. And I
Uh-huh.
think really good point. When an algorithm feeds you the same information and the same worldview over and over again, I don't know how many times per day it has to happen, but it's not all that many. But at some point, your brain actually accepts it as a reality that the facts that are being fed to you, and that's how brainwashing happens in sects, and religious cults and so on. So it is very fragile, and I think it's worth talking about it. I would trust a conversation in a restaurant and in a German cafe 100% more than exchanging thoughts on social media. For example, I see a lot of people coming to me as clients, and they have falling outs with their loved ones, with their partners, with their family, all because of things that happen on social media that they can simply not relate to each other in real life anymore because of things that were posted or being said.
So things were posted, and then you get like this different opinion,
Yeah.
and then what happens? They don't have the capacity anymore to really like talk that through and just see beyond the objective kind of situation, or what's happening there.
Yes, they're having a really hard time leaving the polarized perspective and weaving their way back to an understanding. Because even if you have a different political opinion or an opinion on a topic, health, etc., a real dialogue is kind of circular. So you circle around the topic and you learn from each other. And in the end, you can agree to disagree, right? But you will have shifted, ideally, your
Mm,
perspective a little bit. And that's the thing about social media that is so algorithmic is one side polarized and processed with the other side, that this seems to be not possible for people anymore. They seem to not be able to step out of their perspective as they
mm.
used to be.
And how
Mm.
does that relate to to communicating with AI or with
I do
large language models?
I think that the way of communication is being shaped by the way we communicate with large language models because they tell us what we want to hear. They affirm us, they will reinforce our feelings. They will reinforce our opinions. They are programmed to serve. So we have a strange master servant relationship that is being reinforced and reinforced. And at some point, a human relationship will feel really complex. I mean, it's already kind of complex, and I feel it will probably become more complex. It will appear as more work because we're used to, on a daily basis, to communicate with an entity or that a companion, right? That is anthropomorphized. So we have this pseudo human relationship with a pseudo human that is just pleasant and will tell us what we want to hear. I think
Mm.
that's problematic.
And then you will get what's the result of that? Like grandiose thinking about oneself, narcissistic behaviors, tendencies, all of that.
Oh,
I can
yes, there's already
imagine.
people, yes, that think they are the Messiah because their AI has reaffirmed that they may be a Messiah. They're having some sort of spiritual awakening. I think, let's say, if you don't go spiritual on it, it could be desensitizing you to human relationships. That's what we predict. Because then a human relationship with all the fallout, with the tensions, with the uncomfortableness, with the physical tension, feeling each other's fear and the sensei around it, there will be a desensitization where all of these things will appear as maybe too much, too painful, too hard.
Mm. Yeah, and since we have the tendency to avoid discomfort and
Mm.
try to be more in the comfort, I guess there's more and more like this what I call in my life like victim state, you know? That's
Mm.
what I'm hearing. Like I was really like during the startup years, I was really like push, 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 like okay, let's get this next goal, quarter. I was co-founder sales and really like always pushing hard to to achieve the goals. And then after I after I transitioned out and exited the other company, I was I really connected with myself and my feelings, my internal world, right? And then I came into to a point where I wasn't really challenged that much anymore, and it was just like kind of like in my own world and feelings all the time. And then I would be like very it was hard for me to challenge myself again. I had to relearn that literally to challenge myself in a way that I grow. and that I can actually contribute again like things. And now there's a beautiful, balance between the two where I can access my emotions, but not to the detriment of my functioning and productivity, where actually this impacts and accelerates my productivity because I don't get stuck in like these loop patterns or procrastination or stuff like that. So that's been an interesting journey, and I call that victim state where I was like too well for my own thinking too much in these states of like shutdown and procrastination and all of that and unworthiness.
Mhm. Yeah, it's interesting that you're calling it the victim state, like almost like the victim of your own emotions, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's how we often perceive ourselves. We're overcome with feelings, and there's little tools out there in the world to regulate us. We have little community or less and less community. We have less and less workspace engagements where we are doing the co-regulation with each other, or helping each other being in situations. So there is a point to it that I think with the shrinking communal life, and then with the shrinking of tools, and the care that we can get from a therapist or a coach, it's either costly or hard to find. I do think there is a potential, and that led me to building the Pearl, which is supposed to be this tool where you can tend to your soul, where you can grow your resilience around your emotions, where you can grow yourself as a person through the art of self-discovery, right? I think there is potential in technology and in AI where we can grow human qualities that are important for us in the real world, but it should always be the human at the center of it, and not some sort of mechanism that's pulling you into the technology so that we're just meeting the expectation of venture capital, of people using tools every day as
Hmm.
much as possible, and really claim agency over saying, no, we want to build technology that has the human in mind, that is serving the human, not as an obedient, saying yes to everything, creating these narcissistic tendencies and inflated ego, but one that keeps reminding you, what do you really want to do with your life? What is your purpose? Learn more about yourself, deepen your relationship with yourself so you can deepen your relationship with others and nature. So I think there's a future of new technology design that's hopefully, yeah, more considerate of the human, not pretending to be, this weird servant, but a
Yeah,
real support system.
that's so important that, and I think what I've found in my journey and when I work with clients that really go on a path of real fulfillment and being like super happy and connected is when they first look inside and see what's really true and important for myself and then build on the outside, and not
Mm.
think the other way around like what I did, like when I started my first company. It's like, okay, what problem is there to solve? Because most of these problems are actually created by other technologies that then we solve again with new technology. So it's like a reaffirming loop, right? So not looking only outside, what problem is there to solve? That's interesting. Yes, okay, let's check. Okay, what problem is there to solve? But actually looking internally and what really matters for me. Where do I see myself and the world go? Right? And then from that place, creating a technology maybe that is supportive, or maybe not creating a technology, doing something completely different.
Yeah, that is very, very true. I call it the vertical, right? When we need to kind of recalibrate ourselves, it's beautiful to pause for a moment and to get in touch with your internal world, and like, what do you need right now to feel fulfilled or purposeful? How can you contribute to your community? What are the internal gifts that you bring? What are the things you want to grow? I think that's a beautiful thing. And then I call it on the horizontal, everything will fall into place. I'm sure you've seen it in your work. Once you do this work and you kind of like recalibrate and anchor yourself on a spiritual level, whatever you want to call it, on an internal emotional level, then everything else seems to follow, from my
Mm,
experience.
absolutely, absolutely my experience. And you were talking about your the AI actually that you're building, the Pearl AI.
Mm,
Give us a little bit of like of a view into that. What's the vision?
mm,
What are the, like what can people do there? Stuff like
mm.
that.
Yeah, one part was to build ethical AI, right? We are in a time of the Wild West. Nothing is regulated. There's international AI development, so we are developing a very powerful new technology without having the time to research it. For all the reasons we're all like competing over the markets, and I was really drawn to the question: how can we build ethical AI? And
Mm,
ethical just talked about having the human at the center. And so I thought, these large language models, they can speak a certain language that will, yeah, that will really influence the way you think about yourself and the world, as we also explored in this call. And so I thought, I would love to create a space where people can deepen the relationship to themselves. So I was thinking, what kind of language do I need to speak with myself in order to get there, right? So in coaching, we're very careful with language, we're very artful with language because we're trying to just allow people to explore themselves and to see things about themselves that they couldn't see before. And I was actually quite skeptical in the beginning when I was invited to build this technology with my co-founders. One is an AI developer and the other one comes from the background of brand. And I was like, I don't think we can build a large language model that can allow a soulful process or emotional release, or people getting closer to themselves. So I saw it as an art project. And I was like, okay, let's first create it as art, and then we can see if it works. And then if it works, we can turn this into a business. And so we built the large language model. We trained it on the language of the unconscious. So
mm,
what we're to use is language that is synthesized, that will stimulate your unconscious, that will allow you to do this deep work that we normally do, in session one-on-one. But it's a type of self-therapy. So you are exploring yourself, you're learning more and more aspects, and the tool is there to, guide you maybe once a day. Maybe you want to explore a little bit more, but it's not an AI therapist that's trying to do therapy with you 24 hours a day. And it's not an AI therapist that is going to use CBT, the cognitive behavioral therapy, which is connected to the insurance model. That's kind of why we don't get this golden, beautiful modalities, that we have available to us in psychology, but just kind of like a limited prism of what modern psychology has to offer. So in a way, I saw AI as a way of bringing these deep, wise modalities, to people that maybe can't afford therapy, that are underserved populations, or to people that are curious to learn more about psychology and their unconscious. So that's why we built the Pearl, and what came out of this art project and experience was really, really a beautiful way to engage with yourself that is non-intrusive, that goes quite deep. Some of my German friends, I shared it with them, and they're like, oh my God, so now they asked a question and then they were like, okay, I have to think about this. And so we would sit together, and it was actually really beautiful how slow the process was compared to us using apps, and trying
mm.
to be effective. But it's a beautiful, yeah, deep exchange you can have with yourself. Yeah, I would love for you to try it and tell me how you experience it.
Oh, for sure. That's Pearl.ai, no?
Yeah, it's pearl.xyz.
.xyz.
So the Pearl, yeah,
Mhm.
the pearl.xyz. And you can find it at the App Store as the Pearl app. And you will recognize it. It's really beautiful. It has a symbol of the pearl because we got inspired by animal wisdom. We thought, oh, let's bring some organic wisdom into technology because that's very powerful. And then we found out that the mollusk, which is one of the oldest animals on the planet, is one of the masters of turning pain into beauty, because it creates out of an irritations layer and layers of nacre until you have this beautiful art object that is the pearl, and then it lives in its little shell with this beautiful object that was once its pain. So I found that very inspiring. So you will recognize it. It shows the symbol of the pearl.
So good. I love that. And that brings us perfectly into the cycle of creativity and that the human is made for art, for creativity. and that like we are the ones in charge, and we are the ones in charge of our energy, our creativity, and we should never give up our agency, but actually use these tools in order to dive deeper with ourselves, to become more creative, to be more of that creator in the world, because this is actually the possibility here, I think, to round this up, is to really be a creator of the life that we want to live and that we want to lead, and not give away more of our agency that we already have given to governments and to, a lot of the a lot of the a lot of the companies and whatever, and vices sometimes, right? But claim that power back so we can live more free and more liberated with ourselves.
Yes, I am very aligned with it. And I think when it comes to relationship and your intimate life and how you intimately live with others, then it's definitely important to hold on to the agency, to shape the tools, to have a conversation about it. That's why I'm so appreciative of you having this conversation. And yeah, I love this environment, and then the notion of keeping the human in mind. And if you want to become more humble, because I'm talking to you from California, you can see technology just as something that has happened in nature already, and we're trying to recreate it in an artistic way and engage with it. And yeah, it should always be fun. If you're using a tool that doesn't make you feel fulfilled and embodied and creative and floaty, it might not be the right tool for you.
Amazing. That's so cool. Thank you for that. Yeah, and thank you for the conversation. So good that we got to talk today again.
Yeah, this was so fun.
Alrighty.